Hey everybody!
How you doing in isolation out there?
I was doing okay when I was on self-isolation and I was on day 11, so I was like almost free, and then we went on lockdown and I was just like, fuck. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. I've been catching up on my sort of pop culture to-do list. I've watched BoJack Horseman season 6, which I've been looking forward to watching. I feel like it could have ended one episode earlier than it did. If people have seen the season, they'll know what happens in the penultimate episode, and I felt like that would have been a better ending. Really enjoyed that. It's a great TV show if anybody's looking for something to watch. And I've just started reading the Adventure Zone graphic novels as well. There are two at the moment. The third one comes out this summer. I've got a pair of first editions. They've just been sat here on the shelf waiting to be read, and they are really, really good. So I would recommend those as well. And the podcast, The Adventure Zone.
I've been reading as well. Like, weirdly, being stuck at home, I have this like phobia of TV and video games. I've gone like completely analog in my isolation. But I've been working on my to be read pile, which is not so much a pile as an entire bookcase. So I've read like Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, The Year of the Hare by Arto Pasolina, which is just kind of weird and quirky but super short if you're not a big reader, and I'm finally getting to William Gibson's Necromancer at the moment, which I had 2 copies of in my to be read pile, so I'm presuming I really wanted to read this book.
I think we've got a couple of polls to start the show off.
We've got a couple of polls. The first one is, how would you feel about Daredevil appearing in Spider-Man 3 with Matt Murdock acting as Peter's lawyer, with Charlie Cox reprising the role? 79.6% said they would be thrilled. 10.2% were meh. 8.2% said yes, but recast him, and just 2% disliked him. Weirdly, somebody commented that they thought it seemed like a cheap ploy, and I was kind of like, that's how media works.
I read that comment. I found it quite interesting that they were saying that the MCU was cashing in on Daredevil's success. Was that correct?
Yeah. Basically.
If you think about the relative successes of the two brands, Netflix Marvel down here versus MCU Marvel way up here, I kind of didn't really understand the point they were trying to make.
Yeah, I was kind of confused by either, and I found myself in the weird position of like arguing for Charlie Cox when I don't like his Daredevil.
I mean, I just think people need to understand what fan service is. And if people love a character so much and it connects with them on some certain level, like J. Jonah Jameson did, you'd be...
And the same person was like, yeah, I loved that cameo. And it was like, what's the difference?
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense to me. It just means like Kevin Feige knows his audience, knows what has worked, and is, wants to reward us for giving them billions and billions of dollars in revenue. So I think I'm all for it. And long may we have cameos that work. Don't give me the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. appearing anywhere, because I don't particularly care for them, but I would love to see Charlie Cox's Daredevil. I'd love to see Foggy. I'd love to see Karen. I would definitely love to see Wilson Fisk, and you never know what might happen after that. It would only be, I know it's obviously something that didn't particularly connect with you, but it would only be a positive thing for superhero fans, and I hope there's some truth in the rumour.
Well, I think it's a huge staple of sci-fi entertainment in general. I mean, we love our fan service, we love our connected universes, we love seeing our favorite characters pop up in unexpected places. It'd be a good move for Feige and the rest of the MCU team to kind of incorporate more of the Netflix Marvel shows, because the fans have really, really been wanting that. After last week's episode, we were kind of arguing over WhatsApp about the various merits or negatives about Picard, so I decided to take it to Twitter. I asked people what they thought about Picard. Since we're at the penultimate episode, we've got this week the finale coming up. 38.5% said that it's a perfect end for Jean-Luc, and I have to say that's the camp that I'm in. 100%. Tied at 23.1% were people who said not enough action and that it was too pessimistic, and then 15.4% are mostly enjoying it, but the fans that are happy with Picard outnumber the rest.
Yeah, I think what we said on the podcast last week was where I kind of stand. It's for purists. I'm not a purist. I think that's what I learned last week. There is stuff to be enjoyed in it. Like I said, I liked 7 of 9. I liked Riker and Troy. As a season so far, it's kind of 6 out of 10. I wouldn't go any further than that. Star Trek fans are a huge group of people, and Picard fans are probably most of that group. And so I'm very happy to sit here and say that I'm thrilled that this is connecting with a lot of people, and it's giving people the epilogue to a huge... I mean, in the Mount Rushmore of kind of TV sci-fi characters, Picard's face is definitely in that discussion. So I'm just glad people are able to see a fitting send-off to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's by no means a perfect show. It definitely has its flaws. It's stumbled a few times. There've been some exposition dumps. But overall, I'm just really enjoying another adventure with Jean-Luc, who, as a character, he was a huge part of my formative years, pre-10. I grew up watching Next Generation. My kind of worldview is very strongly influenced by his philosophy and his ideals. It's just kind of nice going on this one last adventure with him. So this week we are doing episode 3 of Amazing Stories, episode 2 of Westworld season 3, and the animated film Altered Carbon Resleeved, which takes place after season 2 of Altered Carbon. So first we're going to start off with Amazing Stories. What were your thoughts?
First we have to say rest in peace, Robert Forster. I happen to have seen 2 of his final 3 performances in the last 10 days by pure coincidence. He was in an episode of Better Call Saul last week, so he's just one of those people that every time you saw him in something, he would always elevate it. And, he's a great actor and he will be missed. All I can say about this episode, if I'm being completely honest, is that I thought it was better than The Cellar, episode 1. Again, it's a quaint, charming, inoffensive little tale, and by that you could take it to mean that I just found it boring, underdeveloped. There was a superhero kind of inspiration to it, but again, this is kind of aimed at maybe the older generation, maybe people with delicate sensibilities, people who don't know what Wi-Fi is. It was just such a very on-the-nose story about a granddad and his grandson, both struggling, one struggling with old age, one struggling with the problems that come with going through puberty and being at school. And they kind of come together both frustrated and they bond over comic books, It's a weird story because it felt to me like they were suggesting that there's a whole generation of dads out there who've created a whole generation of villains as their sons by being so dispassionate as fathers. And again, it just felt like, who is this aimed at? Whose opinion or whose perspective is this that's telling this story? And it just felt like the writer's room could be a bunch of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. There is nothing unique about it at all. And the stories are they're just opinions that I don't particularly share. Maybe they're perspectives that I don't particularly share. And the storytelling is just so superficial and, as you said, predictable. And I'm probably never going to watch this TV series ever again.
When I saw that it was on our roster again, I just thought, oh my god. And then I was like, okay, go into it with an open mind, give it another shot. Maybe the first episode was just wonky. It wouldn't be the first time that a show's managed to turn it around once it got going a little bit. And then I was like, okay, superheroes, comic books, I can get into that. And then it was so fucking predictable. I knew everything that was going to happen. There were literally no surprises whatsoever. And I think I had that problem with The Cellar as well. The story was just so predictable. And I think we got to the point of 36 minutes into a 44-minute episode, and the main conflict, which I would say is the kid donning the villain mask, hadn't happened yet. It was just a bunch of setup about this relationship between the grandfather and the grandson, and it was just and predictably, or as to be expected, when the conflict happens 15 minutes before the end of the show, it had a very rushed, very weak wrap up, and everybody lived happily ever after, and they went off into the sunset, and yay. And I get it, things are rough right now. It's nice to watch some uplifting things and some positive stuff, but this was not it.
I think we mentioned this when we did the first episode as well. These stories feel like 3 big acts, like they could be expanded out into a film, but they're wedged into sort of 40 odd minutes worth of time, and that will never not feel rushed, and that will always feel like the characters are underdeveloped. Again, I wonder who this is aimed at. This should be shown in kind of retirement homes. Clearly there's been conflict between the father and his son, and these decades of problems just washed away as, the granddad has got to know the grandson. And so at the end, you've got these 3 generations of this family, as if nothing has happened over the years. Yeah, it's just happy, feel-good television for boomers, and that's all you can really say about it. There's nothing redeeming about this TV show. There's nothing gripping. There's nothing unique. A version of this for millennials is kind of like Black Mirror. where there's something they try to be unique. They don't always nail it, but they try to do something, futuristic, and this is more, lamplight and compasses and maps.
Probably a good time to move on to Westworld, episode 2 of season 3. And last week we kind of talked a little bit about how it felt like a brand new show, but Dolores' storyline still wasn't really grabbing us. This week I was quite happy to see Maeve again, and I kind of like the idea that she's being set up as the opposite to Dolores. We got a little bit of that in like the last 5 minutes. We don't know whether she will or not, but I enjoyed having an entire episode that was revolving around Maeve and had very little to do with the other players in the cast.
Last week we kind of said, oh wow, they're in a new place, this has got some fresh energy to it, yeah, I'm into that. And this week it was a lot of retreading over old territory, and yet I much preferred it to the first episode. Maeve is a really engaging character. If we've had an episode in Westworld and in Warworld just to establish this ongoing season 3 conflict between Maeve and Dolores, then I'm happy to have it. It was just great to see her use her intellect to break the simulation and find out who her captor was. I just liked seeing that side of Maeve because she's always been an intellectual. I'm very curious actually about what's going to happen down the line. Will we have some big Dolores Maeve showdown heading forward? So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode.
Like, I've complained about Dolores quite a bit, but if the positions were reversed and Maeve was the one out there in the real world trying to like start this revolution and eradicate humanity, I think I would buy that a lot more than Dolores doing it, just because Maeve she's so calculating, she's so intelligent, she's so kind of like quick on the uptake. I could totally see her like going into the real world and like killing it, literally and figuratively. Whereas I never really got that sense from Dolores. Like, most of her characterization as Dolores was kind of this wide-eyed, naive farm girl type thing. And then, yeah, the Wyatt character was introduced into her programming, but Wyatt was just kind of this single-minded killing machine, and there's not really any kind of depth or intelligence to either one of the characters. Whereas Maeve is very complex and three-dimensional in a way that like Dolores just isn't.
The thing I like about Maeve is that within the context of the TV show, she is a self-made woman, if that makes sense. Whereas Dolores, everything she is has kind of been handed to her. With the Wyatt update, it's like a slide of her finger. Whereas Maeve, there's been this real... She's had to work for what she's got. She's been out in Westworld, she's been out in Shogun World, she's now been in Warworld. She's actually kind of learning about the technology that makes her up. She's learned about these other places, she's learned about the hosts, about the guests. Her connections feel a lot more real than the connections that Dolores has made, because hers have been made through fear, whereas Maeve they're made through kind of compassion and made through love, and people see her yearning to find her daughter. And they realise that, she is no different from us. She's just this really caring human being. Whereas when people see Dolores talking about, conflict and taking over the world, they're seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, basically. So I think there is a real difference between the two of them. And I think it was interesting that Dolores wore a lot of black last week. And we see Maeve wearing this kind of white dress this week. So I think the sides of the conflict, it's all being set now. And I just hope moving forward, maybe we finally leave Westworld in the past and move on to sort of bigger and better things.
Two things you mentioned. One, that Maeve has actually had to work for everything she's gotten. And she's also had setbacks. Like, it hasn't been completely successful every single time. She's gotten caught. She's had to escape. She's in this kind of digital world right now, and she's got to figure out a way out. Where she may or may not be out, where that was kind of left ambiguous at the end of the episode. But also, like, her compassion. She has inspired and won over people onto her side, whereas Dolores has kind of taken people and forced them onto her side, which I think also is kind of illustrates the difference. And I think Maeve has had that effect on us as well. Like, she's won us over to her side rather than like demanding that we be interested in her. She's with her compassion, with her dedication to her daughter, even though she realizes that relationship is false and programmed, she's still very much a devoted mother to that little girl. and she cares about Lee Sizemore even though he was an ass. The moment when she realized that like Hector didn't remember her, that kind of heartbreaking moment. Yeah, it's just these little instances and her connections with people have really made watching her story worthwhile.
What did you make of Serac, played by Vincent Cassel? We didn't get a lot of him, and maybe not much of his motivations, but the fact that he can, say, freeze all motor functions to Maeve just makes me think that it'll be all the more sweet when Maeve is able to take him down later on. But I liked it. I liked his energy.
He is an actor that I enjoy watching. I think he brings something unique to every one of his performances. He makes an incredible villain. I'm going to really enjoy watching he and Maeve spar with each other and try to outsmart each other. I think that's going to be a really good match. And yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to happen when he finally confronts Dolores, and if he's going to kind of win Maeve over onto his side or persuade her that she actually does need to take Dolores out.
I don't know about you, but I'm really happy that World War II was confined to one episode, because as I was watching the trailer for this, I just realised I'm kind of done with Nazis in pop culture and in media at the moment. You've got Nazi zombies in most computer games. We've had Nazis in superhero stuff recently. I think Crisis on Earth X they were kind of like Nazis as well.
We've got Nazis in real life now. We don't need them in entertainment.
Yeah, sorry, how could I forget?
It's War World, so they didn't have to like pick a real war that's actually happened. They could have combined a bunch of different wars and just kind of had a generic war world.
One thing I really liked from the episode was when they were walking through the labs and you saw the two creators of Game of Thrones, and they were having a discussion. I didn't pick this up at the time, but I read about it. They were talking about an island off Costa Rica, which is, firstly, that's Jurassic Park they were talking about. They had an investor for it. And secondly, they walked past a huge glass case where Drogon was kind of sleeping, which I thought was fantastic. And then you had a lute player playing the Westworld theme tune, which I thought was pretty cool. So we know that one of the 6 parks is kind of, it's not Westeros world, but it's kind of a medieval knights and kings kind of world. I would love them to explore that, but I feel like this was just done for fan service and some kind of HBO Easter eggs. But I thought it was really cool to see. Personally, I think this is better than episode 1. Very different, but it gets the nod just, I think, over episode 1.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, definitely. I enjoyed this a lot more than episode 1, and episode 1 wasn't bad. I think it was overall it was a pretty good introduction to the new world. It's just I love Maeve. I can't help it. Like, put her in anything and I'm there. Okay, so let's talk about Altered Carbon Resleeved, which is an animated version from the Altered Carbon universe. How long before season 1 is it?
250 odd years.
Okay, so we're like in Takeshi Kovacs's like natural lifetime, I think.
In season 1, there's an explosion where Kel and Ray are in some kind of flying machine. I can't remember exactly what it was. That explodes, and this is 1 year after that. So somehow that Takeshi Kovacs lost that. That was his natural skin. So this might be his first kind of sleeve, I guess. So confusing.
I know, all of these, because these characters can like live forever. It just keeps going on and on. Anyway, so let's talk about Resleeved and kind of forget season 1 and season 2 for the time being. I really loved the animation style. That was pretty much all I was watching it for. The story was kind of done before. I mean, season 1 and season 2, it was kind of whodunit type of thing, and this was another whodunit. Oh, my brother's been murdered. Figure out who killed him. And it felt a bit tired. I wasn't overly invested in the characters. I felt that the kind of introduction of Rey and her realization that this was actually her brother was a bit rushed and kind of dropped in at the last minute and then forgotten about. And I didn't really care that much about any of the characters, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. Like in a computer game where you play the action sequences and then the cutscenes are like all of the exposition
that you skip through and you don't pay attention to?
Yeah, this felt like I was watching the cutscenes of a computer game, but they were all of the action. And so the story that I would normally get in cutscenes, I wasn't actually getting. I wasn't able to play it. So there just always felt like there were huge gaps in the storyline that we weren't ever given, and it made for quite a boring linear story. I thought the idea of, the tattoo art kind of destroying the stack was quite interesting, but I've got to be completely honest with you. I checked how many minutes had gone during this, I think 3 times. It didn't hold my attention at all. I loved the level of violence and action because I feel like there just isn't that much violence and action on TV at the moment. So I was happy to see that. I felt it was never overdone. I felt it was always kind of pretty bang on. For the whole film, as I've said, I've used the computer game reference already. It just felt like the kind of art style that you get in Street Fighter 4. It was cell shaded, loads of muscular people. All the other people looked kind of, like anime tropes with coloured hair and stuff like that. And I've just seen it all before. There was nothing new here visually or story-wise. I've only ever liked cell shading twice in my life, and one is a computer game called 13, which is absolutely fantastic, and the other was Zelda the Wind Waker. The only things I think I appreciated was the fact that this felt like Takeshi Kovacs. I don't know about you, but season 1, Joel Kinnaman's, we both loved. Season 2, Anthony Mackie's, I just could really do without. This felt a lot closer to what I perceived to be Takeshi Kovacs, and I liked the world that it inhabited in. It was a very vibrant, futuristic world, and the only character I liked other than Takeshi was Gina, who I thought was incredibly capable. Basically like an assassin. She could take care of herself. She had a vulnerable side. She'd take care of the little girl. She had a really powerful side. The moment where she stabbed that guy through the neck when they were flirting and then she took his key card, I thought was...
security, that was a great moment.
That was great. And the only aspect of the film I really enjoyed, other than those 2 characters, was the idea of the tech ninjas, who I thought was superb. But
I was actually going to mention those.
Oh, please do. Yeah, go for it.
Loved every scene they were in. Just like, they were super cool.
They were fantastic, but nothing new here. And I would actively tell people not to waste their time with this, even though it was 70 something minutes long. There's nothing here that's particularly challenging or unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. That's about all I can really say for it. It's pretty. If you're struggling for stuff to watch during quarantine, pop it on maybe.
Have it on in the background while you're doing something else.
Say while you're doing some chores or dinner or whatever, but it's not going to be something you can sit down and watch without something else to kind of fill up the rest of your attention.
I mean, did you think this was a closer Takeshi Kovacs to...
Yeah, I mean, this was better than Anthony Mackie's Kovacs, for sure. I think Joel Kinnaman still did it the best, but this would be a close number 2. And then Mackie is like way, way in the distance at number 3. Or
I think he might be number 5, if you think about it, with the other 2 that we haven't had series about as well.
There's the original Takeshi Kovacs, who is also quite brilliant at the role.
Oh.
He's probably tied with Kinnaman.
Oh, he's so good.
They're a match set.
Absolutely. He was fantastic. And I kind of hope we see more of him in season 3. That gets my thumbs down of the week.
I don't know, it's still better than Amazing Stories.
Yeah, I think Amazing Stories, I think there is an audience out there for it. But yeah, it's not us.
Like, if I had to watch one of these 2 things, like if I was forced to choose, my life depended on it, I would, like, without question, pick Resleeved over Amazing Stories every time.
Yeah, I think I would as well, actually, yeah. I think that'll do for this week. Thank you for listening. You can find us on Patreon, where we've got some bonus content that will get you through the isolation. Please recommend any TV shows you'd like us to watch.
Any just kind of general episodes you want us to do. We're not averse to just sitting here and chatting or arguing about random stuff if you want to hear our discussions. I don't know if that'd be interesting to anybody. Wash your hands. Moisturize after you wash your hands. Don't breathe on anybody. Stay inside. That's my public service announcement.
Cool. See you next week.